an action plan that would enable the city to move 100,000 residents out of poverty within the next 4 years. It's an aggressive goal, and I do believe it is achievable, but there are some significant obstacles to that. State of poverty in Philadelphia. So over the last 15 years, if you look at the poverty rate in the city of Philadelphia, it trends around double both the state average and the U.S. national average. And in terms of the top 25 most populous cities, we're second only to Detroit. In the top 10 most populous cities, we're number one. And this isn't the category you want to be first in. In addition to that, the deep poverty rate in Philadelphia is roughly the same as the national and the state average for regular poverty in 2018. So not only are we first in poverty, we're first in deep poverty as well. And this is despite the fact that for the past 50 years, anti-poverty efforts have remained a priority of the city's leadership. Next slide, please. Okay, so recent history of the anti-poverty efforts. So in 2013, the Shared Prosperity Plan was issued under Mayor Michael Nutter. It was the Mayor's Office of Community Services was rebranded to the Mayor's Office of Community Empowerment and Opportunity, or the CEO. And under that, the plan, the term collective impact was the focus of the plan to maximize the benefit of federal, state, and philanthropic dollars. Okay, the plan established 5 core goals: expanded access to public benefits, strengthen the economic security and asset building, increase housing security and affordability, workforce development, and ensure children entering school prepared to learn, and expanding opportunities for year-round learning. So those 5 areas are really focuses of this plan, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And so, an evaluation of how the plan performed between 2011 and 2018, poverty rate declined from 28.4% to 24.5%. Now, it sounds like that 3.9% decrease is significant, and it is for roughly 50,000 people that were moved out of poverty. But nationwide, the poverty rate declined by 3.2% during that same period of time. So a lot of that is, basically the economics of the time. It was a strong performing time economically, and there was a lot more opportunity. And that there's some compounding factors here, but the plan did have a lot of metrics that were in place that were reported, but they were reported inconsistently. I went back through the annual reports, and some years figures just weren't reported, or they fell off. So really evaluating the impact of the plan was difficult. Next slide, please. Okay. So in March of 2019, a report was issued by the Philadelphia City Council called Narrowing the Gap. And it's basically the foundation for the Poverty Action Plan. So the city sought to identify actionable strategies for preventing and alleviating poverty, and identify best practices from across the country. It focused the plan on 3 strategic themes. So there's a social safety net, housing, and jobs and education. So, and again, I'll come back to that in a second. So over the past 12 months, from March of 19 to March of 20, the City Council Special Committee on Poverty Reduction and Prevention and there's actually 3 subcommittees as well. Total of 97 different individuals served on this committee. There was representatives from the City Council, the Mayor's Office, state reps from the Philadelphia House delegation, and there was leaders from the community and from local nonprofit organizations. Okay. They also collected broad community input through public hearings. They wanted to have people with lived experience informing the plan. And they also received expert evaluation of initiatives and with demonstrated success. Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned before the strategic themes of the Poverty Action Plan and the Shared Prosperity Plan's core goals. You can see that there is very close alignment between the two. So in the Poverty Action Plan, the strategic themes equates to the expanded access to public benefits and strengthening economic security and asset building from the Shared Prosperity Plan. So I don't think necessarily think the Shared Prosperity Plan missed the mark in terms of aligning the areas where focus needed to be made. But I do think that there was some other flaws in that plan that I'm hoping that the Poverty Action Plan is able to overcome. So other similarities, both plans speak of collective impact. In the Shared Prosperity Plan, it's identified by the term collective impact, and it's very prominent in the literature. In the Poverty Action Plan, it's not specifically named as a collective impact, but if you look at the Poverty Action Plan, the actual implementation and the focus of the plan activities, they really do seek to address the term of collective impact and being able to improve the situation by really, as I said before, increasing the impact of every dollar. The other thing that was similar between the two plans is in the Shared Prosperity Plan, there was indication that there was going to be a single application and assessment tool created to streamline access to benefits. That is a goal that was not met under the Shared Prosperity Plan, and it is included in the Poverty Action Plan. I think it will go a long way towards increasing the likelihood of success. Next slide, please. Going the wrong way. Okay. So the differences between the plans. So one of the things that I noticed significantly was the composition of the working groups that authored the plan. So the plan under the Nutter Commission was actually authored by a consulting group who collected information from roughly 200 different individuals specific to crafting the plan. The Poverty Action Plan was actually authored by a joint committee that was hosted by Philadelphia City Council. As I mentioned before, there was 97 different people from different walks of life across the city, different types of representatives, and that group of folks collected input through public hearings. So the number of folks who actually had input to the plan, I don't think we can count. Okay, and the other big difference between the plan, and I think this is really a key point, is that the Poverty Action Plan identified that there are some legislative needs at the state level in order for this plan to succeed. And I'll touch on that a little bit further on the next slide. Okay, so the challenges facing the plan, again, the first one, most significant, is the legislation needed at the state level. So there were 6 different specific pieces of legislation that were named. I just listed 4 here. And most significant among them is the minimum wage increase. Okay. So the state minimum wage is still set at the federal level, has been since the 90s. And it's been proposed now by Governor Wolf for the 6th time to increase the state minimum wage. In the current environment politically, I think that there may be more traction to have that take. But up until as recently as January of 2020, bill that was proposed, passed one house but not the other, and so the minimum wage has not been increased. Okay. Other issues that are identified in the plan: the state low-income housing credit, the increased TANF, and expanded clean slate legislation. Okay, and the another thing that's proposed was that the PA General Assistance Program was eliminated in August of 19, and it's roughly 5,600 Philadelphians per year that were benefits of that program. And it was after a 7-year campaign by Republicans in the state legislature to eliminate that program. They called it wasteful. Okay, it was basic benefits for folks without children. And At the state level, I think that there's a significant desire to reduce the funding to the city. And, of the six pieces of legislation in the Poverty Action Plan, only one of them, and that's the expanded clean slate legislation, seemed to have traction to pass. And I think that that's a key obstacle to the plan. And again, in the current environment, I think we may have better success. Other challenges. So the Poverty Action Plan has a public-private partnership structure, and there's some specific issues with that. So number one, partner organizations participation is voluntary unless there are contractual agreements in place. And the plan does not, the Poverty Action Plan does not provide specifics on the formalization or compositions of the Philadelphia Poverty Commission. Okay. Another issue is access to building trades. I could spend, an hour talking about this, but it's relatively simple. They're the best paying jobs for folks that do not have college degrees. They're dominated by white men. It's as simple as it gets. So you're looking at 35% of Philadelphians ethnically are white, but they represent 47% of the building trades. Conversely, African Americans represent 41% of the city's population, but only 19% of the building trades. So you see consistently that in terms of poverty measures, the higher the participation in the building trades, the lower the poverty rate across all ethnic backgrounds. Another challenge to the plan is actually COVID-19. Again, I think we've all been living this for 3 months now, and we all know that there is no new normal. We're still figuring out our way forward. But the city budget had a $649 million budget gap, and created by the pandemic. And a number of significant changes were made to the city's budget. Fortunately, they still managed to keep a $25 million placeholder in the 21 budget for anti-poverty efforts. So I think that, again, in the current political environment, I think that even in the midst of the pandemic, there are some areas for opportunity. And then the last challenge to this plan is longevity. So what we've seen is that, basically each mayoral administration has a new plan. And Mayor Kennedy's term is up in 24. So we're looking at less than 4 years for this plan to really have an impact. And so, whether or not it'll survive into the next administration is a question. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's some new information for everyone. So actually, Nick, thank you for this. The Social Innovations Journal distributed a survey that I put together, and it went out a couple of weeks ago, and we received 59 responses to these questions. And honestly, I expected the folks who are on the Social Innovations Journal listserv to be more familiar with the plan. And this survey was really meant to, number one, gauge familiarity with the plan, and then identify how confident folks were in its performance and how well their organizations align to the plan or the goals of the plan. So of the responses, 71% of the respondents work for nonprofit organizations, and 76 work in social service, direct services, healthcare, or education. Now there was actually 3 folks who identified that working for-profit healthcare. So the mean score on a 1 to 5 scale was 2.4 for how familiar are you with the plan. I expected that number to be higher than it was, but looking at the responses on confidence, they were in the same range. So it seemed to be that folks who were not familiar with the plan were skeptical of its ability to succeed. Okay. Next slide, Nick. Okay, so on the questions of how do the goals of your organization match the plan, scores are much higher. And I think that is actually something that is a key thing to take away from the survey, is that although folks don't necessarily think the plan is able to succeed, or they're skeptical, they believe that their mission, the organizational mission for their organization, is a strong strong supporter, and almost unanimously folks said that their organization supports raising the minimum wage. Next slide. Okay, so the qualitative section of the survey I thought was great. There was 22 folks who actually took the time to put in a text response, and there was three themes that stood out. 9 out of the 22 respondents indicated a lack of familiarity with the plan. Two of the quotes that I thought were really key to take away is that, number one, the city government rarely goes outside of its normal circles to seek input, and I wish it was more widely distributed and talked about. So 4 of the 22 responses indicated concern that the plan will be adequately funded, and then the other one was that 9 of the 22 respondents referenced past anti-poverty efforts and their lack of success. Next slide, please, Nick. Trying to be cognizant of time.
If you can conclude, because I think we're over time.
Sure. Go to the next slide then. Okay, so the recommendations is to create a community of practice and really engage local organizations and increase collective impact. And there's some strategies here for that. The big one is marketing to nonprofits not represented on the special committee, and engage them in the early stage of the plan's development. They need to establish the P3 membership agreements and engage professional lobbying services to engage state lawmakers. These are really the recommendations that I think will help push the Poverty Action Plan to the point where it'll succeed in raising 100,000 Philadelphians out of poverty.